Hi everyone, I'm Sunny and today's video will be about Neptune in the 7th house or Neptune in Libra. So if you have this placement, this video is for you. So this can also apply, by the way, if you have this placement in transit. So you might relate to some of this. And remember, these specific examples might not be for you. Maybe they just might be for you to some extent. Not everything is going to be word for word that's going to happen to you, and you should also consider the fact that when I mention these examples, you might realize that they might be only applicable in a certain amount, well, not a certain amount, but certain times of your life more than others, because your chart does progress and it just changed. So you might have different, how can I say, vibes to how your chart might feel. So do keep that in mind. But these are some themes that you might feel you're connected with as you progress in life too. So keep that in mind. I think I should mention that more often because people always think that sometimes videos are word for word for everybody, and that's not the case. Sometimes it's just for a little while and you might relate to it, sometimes you don't, because it's just a generalized how can I say it, a generalized way to look at this. So now that I said that, with this placement, you might notice that your partners have a dreamy way of approaching you, or you approach them in this way where it's not necessarily that you want to marry them and make I always think of like happily ever after the end. No, that's not how it applies. You might want to, and this applies both ways, where you might put that on your partner or your partners, like your long-term partner specifically, by the way, or that could be vice versa. They can put that onto you. The illusion of having the partnership, the illusion of having a marriage, that couldn't be playing out a certain way. I think of fairy tales with this one, where fairy tales seem all that great and fantastic, but when you really get down to it, they might not be like that. They might not play like that in real life. There's this disillusionment sometimes when it comes to how things will play out. You're like, oh, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have kids, and we're gonna have a great time, and we're gonna have the white picket fence and have this castle and live like in the outskirts of the city, and we're gonna have little ponies and have like a beautiful lake and like a beautiful forest, and all the animals are gonna come chirping like and singing, and I'm just gonna open the window, they're gonna be there. I think of Enchanted. I think of Enchanted with this one, and she comes back to reality, and it's like, that's not how it is. And it's a great plot of an example of how Neptune and Libra can play out, where she thinks she's gonna end up marrying this prince, and then she gets sucked into this whole world, which is reality of the world where we live in, and she meets, I forgot his character's name, but Patrick Dempsey, and he has a daughter, and then he's like, well, you can stay with us, whatever, just until you recuperate and stuff. And she's realizing that the way she ended up living in her cartoon world is not how things work in this world. So she ends up falling in love and stuff. So it's a great example of how you realize that you might go from one partner to the next and realize, oh, this didn't work out because it was like not what I idealized, and this one will, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but you get really down about yourself and like down about people and romance when it doesn't work out, because you really wanted it to see it with rose-colored glasses, but deep down it did not work that way. And unfortunately, I think we all go through that, where it's like we meet people who have great potential, and you maybe do fake scenarios of how great it would be to be living with this person, how great all your problems are going to be solved if you just see it through and just tie yourself down to this person, and you immerse yourself into this person's personality and ideas of what a perfect partner would be like, and you just try to embody that, but you realize slowly over time that it's not really you, and you realize that you might not really be all that happy. I think it's something that you realize that you blur the lines of what it is to be your own independent person and being with somebody and still being an independent person, and you're like, well, I didn't know there was such a separation, because you have such a giving, compassionate heart. You don't want to put any boundaries between that. You really want to be the person at your best, like just a giving person that you don't realize sometimes that it can go vice versa too, by the way. It's not just me critiquing you. It can be your partners too, where you might see that it's not all that great, right? And it breaks the illusion. And you kind of fight it off to be like, there's good moments, and when it's good, it's great, and when it's bad, it's bad. It's like there's moments where you're in la la land and you're like in love and going on dates and, you know, spending some time a romantic dinner with your partner, and then doing like togetherness stuff. I can't think of specific examples on dates and stuff, but there's togetherness time, right? And you're romancing each other, and then sometimes like there's no romance, there's no love, there's no understanding. It feels that there's not a balance. Libra likes to balance. The Libra house likes to balance, and you not having that can be tough, because I normally wouldn't say that Neptune is not a planet of extremes. However, in the house of balance, it can feel like you're going from one end to the other, like who's winning. It's like you're keeping a tally of who has the upper hand in the relationship and who doesn't. It's like you want to pick your battles when it's bad, and then you also want to pick your, like, not that you want to pick your battles on like who's putting the most effort in the relationship, but you're like, I think it can be that way where you might keep scoring that way for some people, where it's like, well, I did this for you, how come you're not doing this for me? Like that manipulation can sometimes come in, like those, and it might be conscious or subconscious. It's not always with malicious intent, but you might notice that sometimes a Neptunian person, and it can be the female sometimes, or the male, or whoever the feminine and masculine energy in the relationship is like, where it's like one tends to be more, not necessarily in control, but like have the upper hand, let's say. Somebody always ends up having the upper hand, and the other person feels like they're getting the short end of the stick. They're not feeling that great about themselves, because it can play into their mental health too, where it's like, I don't feel that loved or appreciated. I don't feel like I'm being considered in these things. People, they just like, the decision making in the relationship is just like, it's not being given to me. Like that option's not in my hands. You're just taking that accountability for yourself, and you feel a little left out. You feel a little bit taken advantage of sometimes. It can be like that, where it's like both people might not purposely mean to, but it can end up feeling like that. Or even at that, I don't think I mentioned this on the previous, I should have, because it's the health section on the 6th house of Virgo, but I might say that. With this placement, you might notice also that your partner's mental health might be not that great, and that could be yours too, where it's like, it's a struggle to not feel so sad or so emotional. And it's not always sad, it's just very emotional and emotionally connected and charged when it comes to Libra and Venusian energy. It can be your partners, your romance, your connections, your contracts, the people you meet. It can be like that. So it can be something that you or your partner might feel very connected with, and maybe the other party might not see it that way most of the time, because they don't share the same chart as you, but they might feel that, where it's like, well, why don't you just stop answering their calls and like focus on us on our vacation time? Or why do you always have to be there for them? Like, you don't need to do all the work for them. It feels like that, where it's like, why are you not putting boundaries between people and us, right? You versus them. It's like the world versus, and maybe some other houses can feel that way too, public houses too, where it's like us or them, right? But this one's specifically about partnerships, so it can be like that. Maybe not always. It's not always necessarily issues relating to your partner. It's sometimes just the people you end up in partnerships with when it comes to work stuff, contracts, people you associate with, to make connections, kind of like maybe like in commerce and stuff like that. So you might notice that it's like, I want to put up those boundaries, but I'm having trouble with that. Sometimes you can just see them, but you don't know how to address them. You might not have the backbone for it, because you're trying to keep the peace. You're trying not to be rocking the boat, and it can be a struggle, right? Not everybody has the luxury to be as direct, right? Because Libra likes to be softer when it comes to, my eyes are so itchy, I'm so sorry. When it comes to talking to people and addressing issues, not necessarily like you have to yell and stuff, but just addressing issues that need to be addressed. You might like go around it and it's like, I don't wanna talk, I don't wanna say anything, I'm just gonna let them bring it up if it's being brought up. But like, even though it's really, really bothering you, there's this passive aggressiveness with this, extremely passive aggressive when it comes to their speech, their actions, their mannerisms. And maybe this can be you and your partner where you're like, oh, I really need them to stop doing this little habit because it's annoying me, but I don't want to say anything because they're tired, right? They came from work. Oh, they're buying a lot of stuff when it comes to art. Like, they're buying a lot of unnecessary things for the home, and I'm trying not to, like, example, home, right? We don't have the money for it, but I don't want to tell them no because it makes them happy. Like, it's something about you learning to be more practical. Not practical like the earth houses, but practical when it comes to expenses and when it comes to your money, because Venusian energy, it is spending money, even though it's not like it is making money, but not in the way where you're kind of working. But if you're just spending and spending and spending, like on food that's like bougie or really expensive items for yourselves or home, to pamper yourselves, to feel good and treat yourself a little bit too much, it can be a strain on the relationship. It can be untrusting, because you really want to trust your partner, but you kind of have a hard time. And you could also have a hard time trusting your partner because maybe they might have a bit of a wandering eye, not because they're purposely trying to wander off. It's just that if someone comes up to them, right, and this can be you too, and you want to be help and stuff, and you lend a crying shoulder, and the other person might take advantage of that like vulnerability, and they might, pass boundaries of like what you should not do, knowing that the person is in a relationship, a committed relationship at that, and then they feel guilty about it, and they want to say it, or they don't feel guilty about it, but they do tell you, and then you get upset, like you're trying to forgive each other, but you kind of just constantly try to blur the lines or trying to put up boundaries again. And it's like, it can be tricky when it comes to having a very non-committal type of connection with somebody, or someone that doesn't know how to say no to people. I feel bad for naming them, but this isn't me saying anything bad about Pisces. But like, think of it like an example of Khloe Kardashian and Tristan Thompson, sorry, of how I don't really keep up with them, but I can more or less know that just because it's all over the news, right? But where you basically know that this person, one of them is trying really hard to be in the relationship, and then the other person is trying to, but maybe they're just gaslighting them into thinking that they're trying their best to, but they end up kind of messing around accidentally, right? Accidentally in behind the scenes. Very much the place where Neptune doesn't like to be seen, so they can be a little bit skittish about it, or like hidden in plain sight, or just try to. That doesn't mean it will work all the time. Neptune is very much things about being brought in the limelight, even though you don't want to be in the spotlight, and eventually the truth will come out, right? Maybe you might not be the brightest person when it comes to hiding stuff, and that's why they get caught. So it's stuff like that, right, where it's like you thought you could trust them, but you don't, right? So it could be that way. They can also, I should have said that earlier, but when it comes to their health issues, sorry, my throat's getting dry. When it comes to their health issues, like I mentioned earlier, aside from the mental health stuff, they might be sensitive to a lot of things, a lot of triggers, right? Neptune is easily triggered by allergies with a weak immune system. Their disposition's not always like that great. Like sometimes for the first years maybe of their life they can be really healthy, and then as they grow older they get very sensitive to a lot of things in their environment, or what things are they consuming, right? Food, drinks, substances, other miscellaneous recreational things that you might understand where I'm going at. So it can be like that. and it can be tricky with your body to trying to basically get rid of it, get rid of the side effects, get rid of the inflammation, or get rid of the triggers. Your body might struggle to um, lose weight or increase weight because Libra is related to balance, and that balance is off. So you might notice that. Sorry, my throat's just terrible. It's almost done. It's almost done. You might notice that. You might notice that you might retain a lot of fluids. You might retain, your hormones might not always be balanced because it is in the house of Venus, which is Libra. So your reproductive hormones or your reproductive system might be having more issues frequently, more chronic stuff. It might make you feel more hormonal when it comes to having more issues relating to that, like maybe even your thyroid or your kidneys or your adrenals, right? So it can be a lot of that, although adrenals is kind of varies, but it's a lot of like you putting on weight or losing weight or having issues keeping your body balanced and not feeling the side effects of going from one extreme to the other. It's like sometimes I feel very sick in one way and then I feel still very sick the other way. So it's like trying to find the balance of being in the middle is going to be difficult so that you can actually feel okay about yourself in the sense of internal stuff. Maybe it's not always on the outer world, on the outer aspect of the body. To keep that in mind. I might elaborate on that more, but yeah, I'll probably add that on the notes because I don't want to take this video too long. But I do think that maybe your partner might struggle with that, or chronic invisible health issues that are not easily visible to the public eye, and it might be a struggle to, or maybe the abuse of the substances or those hallucinogenic items or those drinking habits you or your partner could have, and it might be a bit of a battle too. I think that sometimes might be the issues for some people, that they might fight off the disease, right, that it can bring. And it's a difficult journey because not everybody wants to be dealing with that. I think it's a very personal journey for each person, and whether you or your partner have that, it is one of those things that it's one of those challenges in the partnership where you might not have any of these other issues, but the fact that your partner or you have these challenges because they're triggered by certain traumatic events or events where you wanted to kind of lose yourself and not think about your present life. Your escapist behavior, there you go, your escapist behavior might have led you to it, and now you don't know how to stop, or you were introduced to it for funsies and then you don't know how to stop. It's one of those things where you know that your partner might be your best support group, very understanding, both parties, but they know that it is quite a battle and it's not easy to deal with. So it's one of those things that you might learn to mature with age, to be listening, to be open-hearted, and to be compassionate and be of great assistance to people. But of course, you're not doing the hard work, and the other person's not doing your hard work either. It's a lot about advocating for yourself and believing yourself. That can be like a troublesome issue, believing in yourself, the belief system that you have in the relationship and in your partner, of having their own voluntary input into it. That's a very hefty battle. Regardless of the placement, Neptune can break that, fighting off that disease that's eating you in that way inside. A mental struggle, a lot of, what's it called, self-improvement stuff, but I forgot the word, but yeah, I'll write it down. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll probably write more on the notes, and I hope to see you soon. Please continue to watch my videos, and I hope you have a good day. So bye everybody.